Welcome back, folks. Oil makes a slight rebound, and I want to know how Iran will affect the oil market. At $30 a barrel, why is my gasoline still above $3 a gallon? We talked about this a little bit off the air. There's people in other parts of the country that are paying $1 a gallon. Oil was at $28, now it's around $30. It's going to be around $28 to $30.
If you'll pardon me for using this phrase, we're living in the People's Republic of California. There are so many regulations. You've got not only the federal government and the EPA, you've got all kind of regulations. You got Jerry Brown, who's trying to be as tough as Obama, maybe even more so.
Climate.
You've got taxes coming out of your ears from all elements. So the money that's being used to operate the state is the benefit of low oil prices is being mounted onto by taxes that are being issued out of Sacramento.
But when oil was at $80 a barrel, we were still paying the same amount. It seems like no matter what oil does, we don't get a break either way.
Well, that's the way it goes when you don't have control of the government and when you have the people in government controlling you.
So that's why we need to move to Arizona or Florida or Texas.
You're absolutely right. There are 3 states in this country where you are victimized by the government in a big way. One happens to be California, another
New York and Illinois.
Illinois. Those 3, and they control, by the way, a third of the electoral votes needed to elect a president. So that tells you something else.
Absolutely. So oil makes a slight rebound. The markets are really in lockstep with oil. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I'm glad you asked that question because I have an answer to that. And I've checked this out very carefully. Right now, the markets are not controlled by the investors. They're controlled by the traders. The traders are controlling the market. There's the guys that are short. Most of them are short now, and they're affecting. They want these prices down there because otherwise, if say suddenly, let's say suddenly Saudi Arabia said, okay, we're going to stop producing 10, 11 million barrels a day, we're going back to 8 or 9. My God, the price of oil would go up $10 overnight, and these guys would be caught short and bankrupt. So they are in league, the traders are in league with keeping prices down, especially on oil, to a less extent of natural gas, but oil and copper, certain other things. And I've talked to traders who will tell me that. They say, go ahead, you can quote us because we'll deny we ever said anything. And as you said, it's kind of ironic, isn't it, when you call going from $25 a barrel back to 30 or 31 is a big move. I mean, 6 months ago, if you'd have said we're going to be down at $30 a barrel, I'd have thought the world was going to end.
Right. Iran is now able to glut the market with oil. Now you've got Saudi Arabia, you've got Russia, you've got Iran. I mean, there's a lot of different political elements here. They don't all seem lockstep together with each other.
It's a little simpler than that. I got Iran and Russia are in bed with each other. Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's why I think something's going to happen. The Saudis, I think, are very stupid. They still think that somehow Uncle Sam's going to rescue them if the Houthi rebels suddenly get very strong in Yemen, much more so than they are right now. And at the same time, suddenly Iran says, you killed one of our leaders, and we're going to get you for that. All they need is a cause célèbre to get the troops moving. I still predict something big is going to happen on the geopolitical front, and the Saudis are foolish. They are asking for it because they don't have anybody to pull them out of the problem that they're digging for themselves. And as late as just a few days ago, they said again, we're still going to spend a lot of money in further production and building up our refineries and doing more to increase because we want to maintain our market position.
So are they just trying to eliminate the fracking business in the United States?
Oh, no.
By keeping oil at such a low price that it's not profitable for us to continue to frack, which was taken away from their market?
Well, I think that was the original position. That goes back to Thanksgiving Day, November 24th of 2014, when the price was still around $80. And after Saudis said we are going to protect our market position, which is being taken away by the fracking. That was their excuse at that particular time. But what you've got now, you've got Russia getting hurt a lot worse than we're hurt, because energy is a big part of our total economic viability. But we can live with it.
And Russia actually, when they look at their budget and their economy, they are basing it on oil being at $80, $85, $90 a barrel.
If Vladimir Putin can get a guy poisoned in London because he's making bad statements about him, and I'm not validating that, that's what they say, I can assure you he's not going to let himself go down the tubes, because the Saudis want to keep their market position. Keep that in mind.
So how does the Iran-Russia versus the Saudi Arabian situation, who's going to give first in this?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of who's going to give first. I think the strategy that the Russians, the Iranians, backed by the Venezuelans, who are also in deep, deep trouble, backed by the Brazilians, who are on the verge of bankruptcy, with the I'm going to laugh about this. I remember how disappointed the people in Chicago were a few years ago when they didn't get the Olympics for 2016. Boy, are they happy now. And that lady, that Rousseff, who is the president of Brazil, they're talking about impeaching her. Well, can you imagine in that kind of a climate they're going to have the Summer Olympics in 2016? So Brazil is terribly hurt, because the oil that they were producing from Petrobras, one of the largest oil companies in the world, where do you think they were getting it? Offshore. You know, the most expensive way of getting oil is offshore. It's much more expensive, because you got to get drilling rigs out there in the middle of nowhere, and consequently, Brazil is not getting anything from their oil. So you've got a lot of people today, a lot of the oil producers, who are begging, pleading, beseeching somebody to do something about getting. The Saudis are the key to the whole thing, because if the Saudis came out and admitted, say, look, we're going to cut back, I'm telling you, you'd see the price of oil going from 30, 32, 35, you'd see it go to 50 almost overnight.
So is there an incentive for them to do that? I mean, if you're pumping 8 million barrels versus 10 or 12 million barrels, but yet the price goes up, doesn't that wash out at some point?
It's an excellent question, but the way that the Saudis think, they are number one in the world as far as exporters. And they,
of oil?
Of oil, yes. And they are small enough. They have 28 million people, but most of the people don't amount to anything. The only people that amount to anything are the
House of Saud.
The effendis, you know, the big shots. So I don't know what's going on through their mind, but I believe that they feel that somehow Uncle Sam, whether it's an Obama or whether it's a successor, whether it's Hillary, or whether it's Trump or anybody, they're not going to let those bad Russians do something about the Saudis. And I think they're going to find out.
But if they were paying attention, I mean, doesn't it seem obvious that he kind of shares almost an akin with the Shia versus the Sunni? If you look at the way that things have happened over the past 7 to 8 years, you got what he did in Egypt, what he did in Libya, the Iran deal.
Yeah, but the way you see, I can't go into the minds of some of the Saudi leadership. I would think the smartest guy they had is Al-Walid, the guy, you know, that bought the Plaza Hotel. He's more Americanized than any of the Saudis. You would think he'd have some influence. But this King Salman right now, who's a real mean guy, I mean, he says, you know, we're going to do what we want to do. What's going to happen is I think they're going to run into a wall. Something is going to happen this year, because I'm making the statement categorically, Russia cannot live without economically collapsing it for another 6 months at the prices that are out there right now.
Now, you had mentioned Saudi Arabia, Brazil, but all these countries were operating at $20, $30 a barrel not that long ago. I mean, we're only going back a decade or less where oil was less than $50 a barrel.
You're a little too severe with your timetable. I think you're right. Going back to the beginning of the decade, there was a short period where they were down. But the point is, it got up. If you remember, before the financial disaster or the great financial crisis, you had oil up to $145 a barrel. And people thought, well, it'll get down to 100. Well, actually, for a short period of time during the financial recession, it did get down to where it is now, but it didn't last there very long. As soon as that recession was over, or when the banking situation was straightened out and the Fed worked together, whatever, what happened then, it started working its way up. As a short time ago as June 2014, the price was at $100 for West Texas Intermediate, the light oil that we produce in this country, and it was about 110 or 115 for Brent crude, with the heavy stuff in most of the rest of the world. And everybody got used to that. And the problem was that budgets were built on the $100 price. And this is...
So you got used to the party, and now the party's over, and you're trying to scramble to figure out what to do.
But it was worse than the party. The way of life was based on that. And what the little guys are doing, nobody cares. But when Russia and Brazil and, the United States, of course, the excuse was fracking.